I love that. I love that the guy, he can admit defeat. He can say someone's better. He can get beaten down at a race or lose, a couple times, and he still wants to come back. Like that's champion and legendary stuff.
The thing that truly matters is the Tour de France, right? The Tour de France is the end all be all, is the biggest race. In every race you go to, all you want to do is gain confidence. It's a stepping stone, it's a building block to go forward and get ready to do battle in July.
Welcome back to this edition of Beyond the Podium. We got an exciting show for you coming up today. The first monument of the season now completed in Milan San Remo. We're going to rehash that. Today, Pogacar wanting this win to add this to his legendary, arguably greatest of all time, palmares, comes up a little short. We're going to dig into that. We're also going to check into the currently happening Volta a Catalunya. We're one stage in, but the big meat of this race is still to come. Huge Pyrenean climbs in this spring stage race. And then finally, we're going to get into our other major Tour de France contender, Jonas Vingegaard, out of Paris-Nice a couple weeks ago. Came out that he had a concussion, missed some training. What does that mean for his Tour de France chances? His prep once again interrupted by a spring crash. So to do that with me, welcome Christian Vande Velde. Christian, what's up, man? It's good to see you. And yeah, thanks for making me lead and host this show, you punk.
No, you do it so much better than myself, Brent. So I think everyone at home is appreciative of my, decision to stand back and let you host it. But thank you for hosting. Great to see you, dude. I did not, full disclosure, get to watch the race live on Saturday, Milan San Remo, the women nor the men. I was traveling all day, but I have to say that I was in TSA watching live readouts and just like living vicariously every word that was coming through and looking at the updates, refreshing my phone over and over again. And because we all knew it was coming. I think that's the biggest story, right? We knew it was going to happen. We knew that Tadej was going to launch on Cipressa. And from doing that, you've done the race, correct, Brent? You've done Milan San Remo quite a few times. Yeah. So we know what it feels like. Okay. Same thing here. We know what it feels like to be there. We know the pressure cooker. And we can't appreciate how fast he went, of course, going under 9 minutes up the Cipressa. We'll get into that in a bit. But that's the biggest story of what racing with Tadej these days. In every other race, apart from Milan San Remo, you almost feel like everyone's going for second place. This is a different race altogether. And I got a great quote for you here that I wrote down from 2 years ago. This is from Matthew Van Der Poel after he won. I think Milan San Remo is maybe the one monument where you can have a top five like this, with stage races like Tadej, a world TT champion and our record holder like Ghana, and of course Wout van Aert, where there's really not a category. I put that in there. He didn't say that. So, of course, he would never say that, right? And so many riders could win, but only one does. And I think that really sums it up so well, right? I mean, and that's what makes it a special race. It has all the Italian attributes. It's this massive crescendo over 6 hours, and really, the race is 35 minutes long, really, of what's going, manic at the end, and then it's sexy, right? It's everything's Italian. Massive crescendo, done, sprint, finish, via Roma, and like you said, only one guy could win. And I think the best part of a viewer is that you're watching this all unfold. You don't know who's going to win. This year was completely different than any year that I've really watched it. With only three guys for the last half an hour watching, that's interesting. Where that only three of those guys truly can win, because the group behind, they didn't have a chance, did they? I don't know. I have some thoughts, but I'd like to hear your takeaways, though, Brent, of what you thought could have been different if you're in the UAE camp. Of course, taking your hat off to Van der Poel, racing like an absolute savage out there, and of course Ghana. And then and you have to put into the account that those guys racing for fourth place are incredible bike riders who made they look like juniors compared to everyone else. But I mean, those guys are the best. Apart from those three on the day, they're flying up the podium in the Cipressa as well.
Yeah, Christian. Yeah, spectacular race. So much to say, but it's the first monument of the year. So like you just said, there's dozens of riders in the field that have this circled and X on their calendar from a long, long ways out. This is being played on repeat in training rides and those hard winter sessions. Guys are doing those crazy 6, 7, 8 hour training rides through the winter. not for the 5-hour stage at Paris-Nice or Tirreno. It's for this 6 to 7 hour, big, massive, walloping long day at Milan San Remo. And I love it for the same thing. It's so unpredictable. It's one of these races that, I'll be watching races throughout the year. My wife, Jamie, will poke her head in, what is this? And usually she just walks away. Oh, enough of this bike racing. We know we did this, been here, done that. But Milan San Remo, she's always like, oh yeah, like this is always good at the end. And yeah, it was an anomaly this year, even like you said, to have only the 3 over the Cipressa. And I think for Tadej Pogacar, we've become so accustomed to just seeing him rip everyone apart. Like the amount of times when we see him going as hard as he can and someone's staying on his wheel, it's almost non-existent. It really just doesn't happen. So to see that, for one, it's exciting because we're like, oh, this is not a formality. It wasn't that long ago, a few weeks before the race season started, a few weeks ago in these shows, we were just like grasping for straws of things to talk about. And we're like, oh, does Tadej win too much? Does he make it too boring? It's like, well, here we go. Like we have a genuine race on our hands. And I think, yeah, like to me, some of it comes down to the nature of the course. We talked a little bit before the show about Milan San Remo. It has those punchy climbs at the end, but we're talking around 6,000 feet of climbing over 300 kilometers. When you're talking about a guy who's real, like bread and butter, or what we know him for, is winning the Tour de France. That is not a lot of climbing. It's really nothing. And it's 5-6%. 9 minutes up the Cipressa. So it's the fact that we're even talking about a Grand Tour great like Tadej in the hunt at the end of the first one-day monument of the year is already something that like reminds us, like, yes, he's in that GOAT conversation, because he's raising his hand and he's pointing for the fences to do it, which I love. He's actually standing back at the beginning of the season and he's like, nope, I don't have this yet, but I want it. And it shows some vulnerability, and it shows that, like, I still love the guy because that fire's there, the fire's bright. Meanwhile, you have Matthew Van Der Poel, who's the opposite. We see him, he's in the Grand Tours in those climbing days, pulling the pin. First second, he knows he's not going to be impactful. And he's a purebred one-day specialist, as shown by his Palmares too. So really, like really masterclass race by his team. Like they took some big initiative and rolled it right from the beginning. And then it had his teammate also like sweeping up the some of the lower places in Caden Groves, even in that group behind. So really deep team. And that's also a bit of a changing of the guard, or switching from that position we usually see UAE, where they're just mobbing everything and all over it and stacking the top 10. So yeah, we could just we could pull this apart in so many different ways. What's next, Christian? What have we missed talking about this?
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot. Like you said, you can pull it apart in so many different directions. First of all, I think it's fantastic. You're alluding to this, is that it's fantastic for the sport, right? We were grasping at straws to talk about who could even be a contender with Tadej going to races, and then when he gets taken down a step, I think it's good for the entire sport. It just shows you how deep it actually is out there with Van der Poel. And I think Van der Poel needs these kind of reasons for him to get engaged as well. I mean, he's won so much. I mean, this is already a 7th monument, and that's getting to be rarefied air. That you're talking about Fabian Cancellara, Tom Boonen kind of stuff. But I feel like he elevates himself, just like we've seen in massive rivalries over the year. They need something, a reason to get out of bed. Like, and that's a guy you're going to get out of bed, maybe lose some sleep as well on the way to get out of bed. So I think that was one thing with Matthew. I love the fact that Tadej didn't win this race, and I'm a massive fan. There's no hating going on here. Just because as a fan, I want to see him come back and try to win it over and over again. And so I will always want Tadej to be there. And if he won, I don't know if he would be there. It's not a foregone conclusion. It's just showing how hard it is for him to win this race. It's obviously going to mean so much more to him if and when he does. That's for sure. But yeah, first of all, I want to be there. I want him to elevate everyone's game. But the biggest question is, how does he do that, Brent? And I'll tell you my thinking of this. And, they've already backed it up from where they went, thinking about going on the Cipressa and the tempo they did into the Cipressa. But I think they might have to go farther away. I think that maybe he didn't have all the horses he wanted at the bottom in front of him. He had to make up some serious ground, actually, in the first 2K of the Cipressa to even get to where you to the front. But if you started in the Tre Copies, the 3 little climbs that come into it, and especially in the Capoberta, the last climb, it's not that hard, but it's still can make it harder, and then it makes it easier for your teammates to sit at the front as opposed to pretty much a field sprint. And ladies and gentlemen at home, every one of these climbs to get into is one of the scariest things you'll ever do on a bicycle, going onto a small road. You're on this beautiful, more or less straight-ish road that goes down the coast, and then you take these right turns and go up the hill, come back down. And the descents are just as scary as the entrance of it all the way down. And they're breaking up these climbs. So anyway, that gives you a little mindset of what it's like to even get there. So getting your teammates together and organized is not easy. I think if they brought it back a little bit to where they put the gas down on those three capos before that, then maybe it'd be a little bit easier for them to really make it harder. Because like you mentioned, 9 minutes up the Cipressa. Okay, first of all, let's talk about that. That's 20 seconds faster than Colombo won in 1996. And I don't think we need to talk too much about what was going on in 96, but they were going real fast. And he went by himself all to the finish line. They went 20 seconds faster than that. And it's crazy. And then to think what they backed it up, and 3 guys riding by himself against, he had pretty disorganized peloton, really not too many helpers left behind them. Then they did the Poggio at, 5:45. So not the fastest, but obviously after you've already done that and ridden on the front, not sitting on any wheels. So that was 15 seconds slower than Tadej went last year on the Poggio. So that's the only thing I could think of. I mean, this is when you have a guy like Van der Poel, I mean, this is his bread and butter. He's definitely the fastest. We could talk about the sprint a little bit. Let's talk about that real quick. The sprint, okay, Tadej could have been on the wheel to give himself a chance, but he wasn't on the wheel, and he was a little bit farther off. And I don't think he had a chance either way, especially watching the reruns a few times.
He made his play.
He did, right? So there's nothing to really, I think we can put that to bed. But what would you say, apart from backing up the attacking zones and bringing it out farther, what else can you do?
Yeah, that's so tough. I mean, backing up the attacking zones, it's like you got to keep adding more road. That's how that we see Tadej Pogacar. That's how he wins. He attacks from further out than anyone could have even imagined. Or even when he calls it, you're kind of looking at him like going, "Are you sure? That's crazy. Like 60K." But he does it and it works. The problem is in Milan San Remo, the amount of just like inertia from that peloton rolling along the big Italian Riviera roads. It's real hard to do damage to the best guys. Like, yeah, if they made a big play like that, you'd see the peloton, the camera from the back, guys would be getting peeled off and guys would be getting popped early. But those guys aren't really racing on the Cipressa, a few moments later anyway. So I think they've got to really keep doing what they're doing. I think we talk about the differences that are made with the best in the world. It's not about like always coming up with this miraculous, perfect plan and executing. You really do rely on your competitors like faltering or just being a little step off and having this sort of almost miraculous combination of everything just coming together. And that's a little misfortune from others. That's your competitors having to use a little more energy. So anything to keep his competitors guessing, I think would definitely be good. The problem is Mathieu van der Poel. He's a stone cold, classics one-day specialist. You see the guy ride a cyclocross race, you're like, you could throw anything you want at this guy and he's not going to be surprised or spend any more energy. So I think like if I was them coming back to the race next year, I think you could almost do the same thing, even though everyone knows it's coming, and maybe just adjust the lineup in the team a little bit, try to buy him, maybe like 800 more meters, kilometer out of the wind before he really launches. And then with the expectation that like, hey, next year's 2026, you don't know who, like what everyone brings on that one day is unique. And we've seen that work in Milan San Remo historically. It's thrown out some surprise winners because it's not a race that is like replicated over and over. It's not really even a style of race that happens over and over and over. So it yields well to these surprises. And I think that, Tadej is so consistent. If he's going to show up, he's going to have awesome form. He can climb. He does have the kick, but he's not going to probably out sprint some of these other classics guys if they can hang on to him over the line. So yeah, another 5 seconds of acceleration. That's all it takes to just crack Van der Poel or one of his competitors off the wheel. And then he rides away and does the truly solo Milan San Remo win that we haven't seen in decades. So I hope the team backs him for that. Like going back to what I said before, like showing the vulnerability, it's not just Tadej to say like, I want to win this race, let's go do it. But it's also, it's a big commitment from the team. They're taking every rider on that team. It's a lot of resources. They want to win everything. They want all the points. And this is a big feature in the spring season. The fact that they invest resources into doing this, they have the full squad there. They're posted up in Italy for a long time. That is taking away from other goals, from other chances to get points, from other riders. So yeah, I'm hopeful that that organization will still see the value, and it's definitely good for the sport. We got to sign a petition to keep bringing Tadej back to San Remo. I'm kind of with you. It's sort of nice that he didn't win, because it still gives us something that we can really like turn our eyes on. And I love hearing him say that despite his record there, like he's been in the top 5 handful of times, he still wants to come back, which to me also, if I think about him in this constant discussion of like greatest of all time, I love that. I love that the guy, he can admit defeat. He can say someone's better. He can get beaten down at a race or lose, a couple times, and he still wants to come back. Like that's champion and legendary stuff. Not just like win or go home. It's like win, don't win, come back, don't win, come back. That's the stuff of legend.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think he was. And hearing from his post race, he was pissed. He's not happy with the result. He comes to this race to win, and I think that's a great point you bring up with the resources that UAE brings to this, and not only just the resources that you could be in a different race or preparing for another race with big points, for example. It's risky. Straight up risky race. I mean, we've seen some bad crashes in the past there. So, it's not just getting to the front, do your job and get out. You have to push and shove to just get to the front in the first place. So that's a great point that a lot of people don't talk about often. And you have a Tour de France winner. There's, you think about Eddie Merckx, Nibali, and of course, we're talking about Tadej right now. It's not an easy race. Again, obviously, like we're talking about, to win, but it's even more seldom that we have a true contender year after year to the Tour de France this early in the year to be able to be in the conversation to talk about this. So God bless Tadej. Hope he keeps that coming back for a very long time. But as far as what he did wrong, I don't think he did anything wrong, Brent. I mean, the only thing I can think of is that, to your point, what you're saying with the way he raced and just turning the dial, maybe, if he truly was like, let's say he wins everything yet again this year, which let's be honest, it's looking that way. He just trains for this, and he's in the same kind of crazy form that he is in June or July in the World Championships, where he just has that little bit more, that extra power on top, where he can make the difference. But what else are you gonna do, dude? I mean, I wrote all these stats that which blows my mind. I mean, the fastest time Van der Poel went up Poggio, he averaged 39.18 kilometers per hour uphill. I mean, that's almost 24 miles an hour. Is 24 miles an hour? I mean, it's incredible to see those guys go into those corners and get held up by motorcycles going uphill. Had to feather the brakes at least, and sometimes slam the brakes, but definitely feathering the brakes through most of those corners. So I don't know how much faster you go. I mean, they're joking, I guess, after post race that maybe next year we'll go under 8 minutes for the Cipressa. I mean, that's obviously joking, tongue in cheek, but like, geez. And then you have actually Ghana had a great quote. He said, "Those two guys took years off my life today." And this is one of the strongest dudes in the world. And Pippo, we didn't talk anything about him. I mean, hats off. This is a dude, I think he's 85 kilos. So, 185 pounds. He is a unit. He's a big boy. And to go those kind of speeds and come back time after time again, and then still get second place and get the better 10 in the sprint. I mean, hats off to him as well. So, yeah, there's a lot to unpack. I don't know what the answer is. I don't think anyone knows what the answer is. And that's the beauty of Milan San Remo. It really is. That's why, because anyone can be up there, and you think of, like you mentioned, the different riders who have won here. There's a lot of riders who won. You think of the Zabels. You think of Eddie Merckx, of course. Cav, get in there. I mean, beautiful lead up by George Hincapie there in the finish, win in 2008. I think that was 2008, 2012, 2008. And anyway, it's
totally
always
different
one of those races.
They're a totally different scenario than what we saw this year. Love it. Yeah,
every time. Yeah, so I was top 20, and I was in a crash at the finish line, and I crashed like 250 meters ago, and I look up, and Eric Zabel already had his hands up in there, like way down the road. So, I mean, anything can and will happen. And like you mentioned, the people who you're racing against, anything could happen with them as well. There's a lot of flat tires out there. It's raining this year. We didn't even talk about the weather. We've seen snow over the Torquino before in the past. I mean, some of the coldest days on record. That's like top 3 coldest moments for a lot of those guys who were part of that snow day many years ago. So yeah, that's a beautiful race, and I think the allure of Milan San Remo, one way or the other, just got elevated yet again after, I would say, maybe one of the best editions of all time.
Yeah, the Tadej factor. Speaking of the unknown, what are the odds we see Tadej say, well, I still have that Roubaix checkbox that's unmarked now that the San Remo one didn't get filled? It seems crazy, right? It's like, I feel like it's not the year. Seems like stretching your luck.
I agree with that, and I think the juice is not worth the squeeze on that one. And especially after his crash in Strade Bianche, I think definitely the front office realized this risk that they do take every day. And if you want a champion like that, and the guy who he slings it, man. I mean, he is swinging for the fences all the time. Yeah. On every descent, he's a pure bike racer. Of course, you have to let him be Tadej, and that's why he's such a special person. It's because he loves to race his bike. He's not thinking about just July. And
but that may be one too far for the spring.
I think so. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Flanders is already too much. Milan San Remo is a lot. I mean, they set records going down the Cipressa this year. I mean, those are all looking down the Strava. It was like PR, King of Mountain. That's, think about anyone who's on Strava. Think about your local. It's not easy to get anything, even your local KOF.
Those badges are hard.
Yeah, Milan San Remo badges. Yeah, those things are really hard to get.
Oh man, gosh. Well, yeah, plenty more action to come from the classics. I'm definitely tuned into Flanders, probably even more now. Not that I wasn't before, but yeah, see this the evolving of Tadej Pogacar and how he fits in with all the other classics men. But before we get there, we got a big week in Volta Catalunya. Christian, this is a race that you and I both know well from our time living in Girona, living in Catalunya. Stage 1 already complete as of Monday when we're recording this, but just really the appetizer. And I kind of smirked when I turned on the coverage. You gave me a heads up to check it today. And sure enough, it's raining in Catalunya in Volta Catalunya week. This race, yeah, when I think about it, it's always on that cusp of like summer and gnarly winter hanging on in the Pyrenees. I remember the year of the frozen Coronias, the race neutralizations, and just so much climbing. Even this first day, a really exciting finish today on stage 1, but even the finish line scenario does not do the terrain that they just covered justice. Like, this is terrain that we train on outside of Girona that is like, we're going on a day of mountain training, and here they are. There's 30, 40 guys coming in the main group, and a real exciting sprint finish. So it'll be different players, obviously, the next few days as we head into the Pyrenees. But already exciting stage 1 today. Christian, you're not on the mic for this one. It is on Peacock, which we have to remind people. What'd you think of stage 1 today?
I loved it. I mean, you're talking about Jamie, and the same thing goes with Leah. Our wives always roll their eyes. They don't want to watch another bike race. But, of course, when you're watching Catalunya and they know every nook and cranny because you've been on those roads, today's finish line was 40 kilometers, maybe 25 miles away from where we lived. I lived for 16 years. So it's really fun. It's nostalgic. But you bring up a good point. I mean, every one of those roads are twisty, turny, treacherous, uphill, downhill, especially going down the coast today. I immediately turned it on. I'm not going to lie. I turned it on before you, and I gave you the heads up, like you said. And I had PTSD bad, man. So you show the 0 kilometer banner, and it's raining like that, and they're attacking right through San Feliu, and I'm like, oh my God, like I do not. I'm so happy I'm not there, and you just because exactly what entails, right? And every one of those stages in Catalunya is long as well. They haven't really got the memo for the shorter races. They just like them pretty long. So today was a long day again. Yeah, it's totally old school. It is one of the oldest races on the calendar as well. I think the second or third oldest race ever, I want to say, Catalunya. So both Brent and I have a lot of bias, obviously, for this race, but this race is nasty, like you mentioned, and it's just going to get worse. So there's still supposed to be some rain on the forecast for tomorrow. They go into Figueres tomorrow from Banyoles to Figueres, and those two towns are very close to Girona. But stage 3, looking at that one, Brent, that's 16,500 feet of climbing. Jeez. Up into La Molina. Same as it ever was, my friend, over Crueta.
But less La Molina laps. A lot of times they do like those La Molina laps once they're over. I think it's just one time up this year, but yeah.
It goes up and over La Molina, goes down to Alp, and then turns around and comes back. Yeah.
And by then we'll be seeing the headliners at Volta Catalunya this year for sure. Roglic, Primož Roglic, really it's kind of a dress rehearsal for the Giro. We got Roglic, Ayuso, Simon Yates sort of in his potential. He's being pretty coy with GC ambitions, him and Sepp Kuss both. But yeah, definitely some headliners. Egan Bernal. I look at this and I think Roglic is the one that is sort of, it's like his for the taking. Maybe that's because I have this, the last time I raced Catalunya, I believe was one of the years Primož won, and I have just his like authority and dominance of that race etched into my face. But the way that he could sprint for those time bonuses, because it does come down to seconds sometimes in Catalunya, but also climb. Catalunya is also a race that we see crosswinds once in a while whip it up as they go rolling down through the plains. And Roglic is also traditionally super savvy in terms of the GC men and that. So I definitely have him in the driver's seat in terms of who's like sort of the favorite and maybe has the most to gain just from like the psychological, the team environment. This is still a team that is, they're not new to building this squad around him, but he hasn't been he's not a franchise player with this team. And I feel like they're still working out that winning combination to support him. So how do you see Roglic stacking up against Ayuso, that potential preview of the GC rivalry?
Yeah, I think that's well put. I think this is a good precursor for the Giro. But calling Roglic over Ayuso or Ayuso over Roglic is almost impossible to call right now. I mean, Roglic is one of those guys who comes up so quickly. He's one of the guys who we said for a decade now who can prepare almost better than anyone at home and come to a race so sharp. Even if he wasn't sharp yesterday, he will be tomorrow. So you cannot discount him. And like you said, with the time bonuses or the Roglifications, we've called them during the Vuelta for the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, it's really hard to beat that guy. But I think a lot of this might come down to legs. And hopefully they have good weather, especially like you said. I was in the breakaway that day that we were all frozen. That was really bad. Johnny Welts came up to me in the team car and asked for a rain jacket. He's like, "Yeah, I'm sorry, buddy. Your rain jacket's not here. Your rain bag is not here." So yeah, up and over in La Molina, that was horrible. So I remember that day very well. So I think they're going to be okay, Brent, as far as weather goes. The bad weather should be passing through, because you have to remember today we're seeing 50 degrees and raining in San Feliu. It's snowing up in La Molina and Andorra and all the. So it's not a little bit. It's dumping up there right now. So luckily, a little bit different than Paris-Nice. I think it's going to be clear sailing again. I think, but I'm going to go. I'll play the devil's advocate. I'm going to go with Ayuso, Brent. I think this could be really one of his big coming up parties. Not that he hasn't been a massive talent since the beginning, but to really show that dominance and show that he's truly like, he is the guy. Okay, not Tadej, but he's right behind him on the team. And that team is so stacked. I think he's old enough and wise enough to start to realize that, he's not getting younger. Just might as well start stacking these wins and taking this very seriously. And this is semi-home ground for him as well.
Yeah. Whenever I've seen him compete and watched him, he really strikes me as he is a champ and a winner. He wants to win. We were having those discussions even in the beginning of the tour last year. Like, ooh, is he saving something? Like, is he lives large. He loves being at the front and racing in the front. And I think he's got to be realizing already, like, in terms of his future within this organization, also the time is now to show that he can continuously, consistently shoulder the responsibility and the privilege of leading that team. And really the Giro is the first big test and rendezvous before that. Catalunya is, like really the next big crossing point for him on that journey. So yeah, it's going to be exciting week. I think I'm going to be tuned in to check those old scenery shots and old training grounds. But Yeah, the action there's so much climbing. We got multiple mountaintop finishes. They're heading up to really like Montserrat, being able to finish up there on a bike. I've only played tourist up there, but to have like that place shut down for the finish of a bike race, only Volta Catalunya or maybe the Volta España could do that. So definitely to everyone watching now, continue watching that on Peacock the rest of this week. We'll be coming at you with live coverage every day. Before we move on to the end of the show, Christian, we got to check in on our boy Jonas Vingegaard. He's had a tough couple of weeks. He had a really promising start to Paris-Nice, was looking sharp, had the team rallied around him. I would have put him as like co-leading with Matteo Jorgensen, but was really in the driver's seat with that yellow jersey, and then had the unfortunate crash a little earlier in the year than his horrific crash at Tour of the Basque Country last year. But once again, another bump on the road to the Tour de France for Jonas Vingegaard. And as these top teams often do, they're pretty quiet on their star power and their leaders when they hit the deck. And good on them. They don't have to tell us anything. They're not obligated to tell us his exact movements and training movements, but we all want to know. And it did just come out recently that there was definitely some concussion happening with that crash from Jonas Vingegaard, and there's all sorts of debate that then rages around this continued topic of discussion of concussion. So should he have even started that stage after he crashed? Should he have went home? Does he need more time off now? How much does this interrupt his Tour de France build? And reading that he had 9 days off the bike, that's a lot for a Tour de France contender in March. But I'll say, like, my like reference point for Jonas Vingegaard now, physically, but also the character and commitment that he has after seeing what he did with so little prep at the Tour last year. Now, when I read 9 days for him, I'm like, that's nothing. He's fine as long as the health is first. So like the training's the easy part, the form's the easy part, the health, that's the hard thing because you don't really have any control over it. And the concussion situation, the injury of a concussion is so maddening because there isn't an X-ray, or there isn't just this like line in the sand of like, now it's okay to ride. It has these really, really ambiguous, nebulous symptoms that just sort of like arise and fall and arise and fall. And 9 days without training, he may be back on the bike now feeling good. Well, he's not really going to know until he's 2 weeks into his first training block if that situation of having a little bit of a brain injury, traumatic brain injury, is fully resolved, or if it could still be sort of plaguing him. So very much, as I see it, very much like a time will tell, but also a stay calm. It's Jonas Vingegaard. We saw what he did last year with, being in the hospital for almost 9 days, 9 days off the bike. He's okay.
Yeah, he's okay. But like you said, the biggest problem with concussion, every time you break a bone, 6 weeks, you're healed, no matter what bone it is. Surgery, 10 days, you're racing again. You put a plate, just like we're seeing Egan Bernal out there racing right now, Volta Catalunya. It's not a big deal. Concussions, you just don't know. It could be 1 day, it could be a year. You just don't know how is it going to react, or really what causes and effects you're going to get because of the break or the concussion. I think I could speak for myself and some of the big concussions that I've had in the past, that it was not funny. And you have all small things that, the body follows the mind and vice versa, and depression, all the different scenarios that happens with concussions as well. So luckily he's got a fantastic team, and there isn't that much pressure. He's got great form coming into it. 9 days off the bike is nothing, but it's really the biggest question mark of hopefully that is in the rearview mirror. And, maybe it was even compensate going for 9 days. Maybe he only needed 3 days, for example. Compensate, excuse me. That's exactly what he probably needed. Just pump the brakes, just chill out. I mean, that was my biggest. If I think back all the times I crashed, Brent, I always jumped on, always feeling like I'm under the pump. And a lot of it was internal pressure. It wasn't necessarily from my team. It was just internal pressure that I needed to get back out there immediately. And that was the worst thing I could ever have done. You should just, what's another week? It doesn't matter. You just all you're doing is chasing your tail. So I think as of right now, there's no reason to panic. And like you said, after 24, what we saw after Basque Country and the way he was come back, and he spent more time, by the way, in the hospital last year than he did taking off the bike this year. And then, course, what you brought up with the concussion protocol, should have been put back on the bike. It's so unfair of a discussion to be able to do this on the fly, no timeouts. I don't know what the answer for that is, apart from having sensors in their helmets, to have something that there is a red light, that if you hit this much G-force, this much of an impact on your head, that you're automatically put into the concussion protocol. But apart from that, I mean, if you truly have a concussion most times, you're an autopilot. You just jump back in the race and you start racing again. You don't even think twice about it.
All the adrenaline and all the other feelings of that just go along with being a pro cyclist. Like, yeah, feeling a little dizzy, feeling a little sick, having a headache, like that all happens to us when we're operating at a really high level, aside from any head injuries as well. So it's it is really I don't know, I'd say it's a continuously needed discussion with like the hope and goal of having some like evolution and clarity on where we're going that will make it safer and more sustainable for everyone. But yeah, until that technology exists to provide some sort of fair clarity, yeah, we're just speculating and guessing. And every time you see a rider hit their head or have some long lasting effects, I just cringe. And yeah, that's the worst injury to have. It's the worst rehab I'd say I ever had in my career. Wasn't the leg fracture where I couldn't walk for 6 months. It was the head injury that I didn't know if it was going to be 1 month or 6 months or 6 years or just with no end in sight. So yeah, on a performance and fan level, pulling for Jonas Vingegaard because we want him at the Tour. We want to see him racing strong and see him as a competitor and champion we know he is. But on a human level too, gosh, we only got one brain. So I think, like you said, fortunate to have a good team and making the right smart decisions for the long term.
Yeah, and then as far as looking forward to July, as fans, I don't think we should be worried about it as of right now. I mean, of course, you could read into it in which direction, like we just mentioned, that it could be some other problems that are going to exist in the coming months, or there could be completely behind them and there's really nothing to talk about. So let's hope it's the latter. And all we hope for is a healthy starting lineup going into Tour de France for all these teams. So we see a great race. And that's all you could hope for. And last year, we had for the most part, these guys all it was like a hope and a prayer for most of these guys being involved in that crash, apart from Tadej. And then unfortunately, Primoz was taken out in that bad crash with the traffic island during the Tour. But for the most part, we saw a pretty fair fight apart from what they came in as. So we'll see. I mean, right now, these races are used for preparation for the most part. Of course, you want to go win. These guys are born killers. And they want to go win every race, just like we're talking about Tadej. But at the end of the day, the thing that truly matters is the Tour de France, right? The Tour de France is the end-all, be-all, is the biggest race. In every race you go to, all you want to do is gain confidence. It's a stepping stone. It's a building block to go forward and get ready to do battle in July. And these kind of little ones, that hurts more than anything else. Having to quit races, watching other riders go and kick ass on different continents, that's hard. That's really hard when you're at home. And I know you know the feeling when you crash out a race and then you see the guy that you're supposed to be racing against in a couple months from now, and they're killing people. You're thinking, there's no way. And so just staying away from that.
Gotta go into your bubble. Stay with your team. I think these modern day Tour de France riders, though, I think they are a really good example of this more inside out confidence. Like I think they're realizing and learning and even training to show up at the start line with a confidence that does not come from their last race or their recent power as much as leaning back into like when Jonas Vingegaard thinks of what makes him a champion, legendary competitor. Yeah, it's his VO2 max. It's his threshold capacity. It's his lactate tolerance, all this stuff that is built with training. But like what also serves him really well is his commitment, his determination, his the obsessive focus, this like drive to really find his limits. And like all of that doesn't change no matter how many races he's done or when he's hit the ground or how many threshold days or altitude days he has. So yeah, I think I think that is the confidence debate is one I love having, because I think the confidence type of a modern day champion is evolving a little bit from what it used to be. Whereas before you had to have the win, or you had to have the numbers in training, or this 40 race days before the tour or whatever it was to even like give yourself a chance. I think, and that's what last year I think taught us, and probably taught Jonas a little bit about himself, is, whoa, I've got all the tools. I know I can be confident, whether it's one race, whether if he just races the Dauphiné before the tour, I think it can be enough. If he doesn't do any races and just does a training camp, it also could be enough. It's not traditional, but I think it's still possible for these new age modern day champs to show up and really be their best confident selves.
I will say, I would agree with that, but I will also say that every time that you do have to come back from the floor, it makes it that much harder, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a toll.
It is a toll. And I always talk about just a whole glass half full, or even a full glass. You got a pint glass, and everyone's glass is different size, right? And every time you do that, it just keeps on shrinking until you have nothing left in that glass. And you're just like, you know what, I'm done. I can't continue to keep on really fighting from zero to here. There's a fight in everyone out there. Everyone's fighting. But when you're fighting, you're already healthy and you're getting to that 1% of absolute peak instead of going from 82%.
It's a different kind of fight.
It's a different fight. It really is. And it takes a lot out of you emotionally, not even physically, just on that emotional level is brutal. So, and you talk about physical, you think about the guys who have put together 18 months without having serious energy. That is a big talking point as well. You think of, even Remco is a great example of this. He's another one, man. He's going to have to fight hard. And this is a nasty crash he's having to come back from right now. So every time you have a clear runway that you've been off the deck or without serious energy for a lot, that's a massive leg up on everyone else who has had to come back from, has to take time off, and emotionally, physically, whatever you want to say. One day it's emotional, next day it's physical, and then everything changes around and you're back in the same spot you were yesterday. So, oh God, this conversation makes me really happy. We're nice and warm, dry.
We're doing well sitting here in these nice, comfy, dry chairs, aren't we?
Oh God, you're gonna do very well in your next line of work, Brent.
Hey man, I'm here with you for a while, so.
That's true. I could use it. Well, thank you, Brent.
Right,
I think that pretty much wraps everything up, my friend.
I think we got it. I think we got today's show. It was great being here back with you. Hopefully Christian will be linked up again here with you soon and Beyond the Podium. And for everyone else, be sure to tune in to Volta Catalunya all this week on Peacock, and we'll see you next time on Beyond the Podium.
For all your cycling content year-round, subscribe to NBC Sports YouTube page. We got it all.